So I'm hoping that this looks pretty straightforward to everyone at the moment. Yep.
Yeah.
Now let me just try and see that now that that's done that, let me see if I can get the window happening. Yep.
Yeah. That's one.
Right.
You know, sometimes we use import, sometimes we use require. Why is it that now we don't have to require React?
I've never done require React Native. So the difference is we used require when we were doing the server-side Node.js with Express.
Yeah.
So require is the old common JS way of. So there's actually, let me bring something up here, right? I had it on Facebook, but if I go JavaScript version features, let's just see. Let's just go history. Okay. Let's see if this one shows us what's coming in. Okay, so this shows you a brief history of JavaScript, or what we call ECMAScript. Yeah, if you remember, it was actually originally the European computer manufacturers, and they don't even exist anymore. So to go down, you can see that for a long time, not much happened. You know what I mean? Like 99, like for a long time, there was just a lot that didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, ECMAScript 6, 2015, a lot changed, right? And you can actually see here, that's the last time that they incremented this. Now they actually just call it ES 2015, 2016, 20, you know what I mean? Or 2020, yeah? Right? So you can see at 2015's where we got let and const that came in, you know, for the different scopes, yeah? So they didn't even have const in JavaScript before, right? You couldn't even set a variable as const, so, you know, people could just change, everything was just var, right? And then if you go down, you can see, you know, they've added a lot more here, but where is it? Look, the spread operator came in 2018, so not that long ago really, is it? Yeah? But I want to find JavaScript. There should be one here. Let's just see. Let me go to images. Let me go to images, because there was a really good poster that someone had. One image it was, and it had everything. It was on Facebook. Anyway, look, the next thing that sort of happened was modules. Does that make sense? So let me just go to, let me pull that up. Let me just go ES modules, right? So ES6 modules came in, yeah? But where's the good one? ES modules. What? Ah, no wonder it's all crap. I'm in Edge. I'll go MDN as well, right? Because it's a good question, yeah? So here's a whole background on modules, all right? So JavaScript programs start off pretty small, okay? Most of its usage in the early days was isolated to small scripting tasks within the browser, just for a little bit of web interactivity. You know, click button, make the div background color pink. You know what I mean? But as the scripts got bigger and bigger, and we go forward, especially now with the advent of Node.js and all that sort of stuff, people are now starting to use JavaScript to build full complex applications like they do with C# or any other language. Okay. Now the problem that they came across is that there was no way to isolate or create a scope for variables within JavaScript. And what I mean by that is if you've done script source equals in your scripting class, haven't you, when you added JavaScript to a web page?
Yeah.
Yeah? So the problem is, right, let's say that I had a HTML document, okay? So here's my HTML document, okay? And let's say I had two JavaScript files. I had one that was called, let's just call it a.js, yeah? And I had another one that's called b.js, right? And let's say I have one more that's called c.js, okay? Now, let's say that I reference these, you know, script source equals. Now, the order I do this matters, okay? Let's say that I first reference a.js, yeah? Then b, and then c, okay? Now, let's say that a had a variable called name, or person, right? And a variable called person, right? And we say it equals Bob. Simple, yeah? Now let's say B had a variable called person, and it was Sue, yeah? Now let's say C, we have a click event to a button, and we go person equals Fred, right? Now, the problem is, when a browser loads up HTML, it does it sequentially, one line at a time, from top to bottom. It reads the first line. That's why you need a doc type at the top of a HTML document. Because that's the first thing the browser reads to know what version of HTML you're using, how to try and do the best job to render it with that version. Does that make sense? And what HTML specification and protocol it's using, right? Then it goes down. Now, think of this as well. This HTML is being loaded in this browser, and think that the browser has a JavaScript engine, yeah, or a JavaScript runtime. Make sense? So when it gets to A, and it goes to load this, well, now we've got this variable person in the global namespace, or in the global scope of the JavaScript engine, yeah? Then we get down to B, and then it's got another person, right?
So it creates two persons.
Well, no, what it does is it creates a naming conflict. The same as what you get if you had two variables with the same name in the same scope in a C# project. But you don't get compilation errors with JavaScript. You just get runtime errors, or you just get things behaving how you don't expect them to behave. Does that make sense? So, to overcome this, they created modules. And modules actually create a self-contained scope that you can import and export between different scopes. Does that make sense? Yeah? So when you do an import, you're introducing that into the scope of the module that you're working on. Everyone's a module, yeah, but you can import other ones. But you've got control over the scope of variables. And the first way that they actually sort of, another way that they sort of pull this off is ifs. Immediately invoke function expressions. Why? Because that's the scope of the function, isn't it? And it automatically kicks itself off, like it's a function that calls itself. So it bootstraps itself, so to speak, but everything that runs in it runs in the scope of that if. Okay? So the idea is to not pollute the global scope. Right? Of course, there are still some variables that are available in the global scope, like console. So you can go console.log. You know what I mean? There are some functions like fetch that are always available in the global scope. But they're ones that are part of the JavaScript specification, not custom ones. So with that, there has been a history of different ways of doing modules. Yeah? So some of the first ones that we had was like CommonJS, AMD, and then other ones like RequireJS. So RequireJS is just a really easy one for us to use when we're doing the Express, yeah? Because you just go require, and you just say the name of it, yeah? But with React, we have to use, so you can see the different histories of them and have a look at them and how they're created. Does that make sense? Yeah, the whole thing on modules is there, and they can even show you the different browsers that support them, and you know, and how to do the imports. And look, there's examples of how you can create modules. See, they've created a module canvas and square, yeah? right? And you can see there, they show you exporting, make sense? And then importing, and then they show you the different ways it can be done. Make sense?
And are components same as modules?
No, components are UI components.
Okay, because I thought view and text were components of React Native.
Yeah, they're components.
Okay.
But like the whole React is the module.
Okay.
Like if you look at this is the module.
Yeah. And then view and text are the components of the React Native module, right?
Well, they're just functions that live in that module.
Okay.
Yeah. So modules the outer container.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like modules the container for everything, and then inside that, like then you have whatever is exported from that module or available in that module. So in this case, view and text, they're just functions that are in that module.
Yeah.
But they're functions that we call components. Why?
To
Why?
isolate code.
I suppose because they work, I mean they're like bricks which you can,
Why do we call what is the context that makes a function a component?
it's pure?
It's what?
Pure?
No, a pure function is a function that doesn't change anything outside its environment.
Oh, you mean in React?
Of course in React.
Oh.
Only in React.
Well, that's the function that returns this.
Hang on, no, it's not XML. Let me just turn the crank. He's getting close. What is it? You're almost there. What does it return?
I forgot the name of this.
JSX.
Yes.
Yeah? And JSX again is something that only exists in React. Right? And calling a function a component, it's a React thing. We're using the semantics of React. Make sense? Right? There's, you know, in other, look, in C#, right, when, like in the diploma we teach the model view controller framework, in there we've got classes, but we don't call them classes, we call them controllers, because that's how we're using them.
It's just semantics.
It's semantics, right? It's giving meaning to it with context.
Okay.
Yep. The same as what I went through this morning, how we could also call a component a screen when we're using it under the context of React navigation. It's contextual, semantics. It's a better way to communicate. Yeah?
So
It's a specific way of communicating. And I can tell you, like with students it's fine. I've got all the patience in the world with students. I hope you know. But when I'm working with IT people, right, if they're not specific with me, or if they're vague, right, I shoot them down. I do not waste my time.
error.
You know?
Yeah, okay.
Because it's like, you know, you go through enough of it, you just don't have time for it anymore. You know? So it's very important to be able to talk specifically, because IT is specific. Yeah.
So coming back to the original question of when you use require and when you use import, is that also semantics?
No, that's just whichever module system, AMD or CommonJS or Require, is the easiest one to use. So when we're doing the server side, because remember, Node.js, like our Express app, that was running at server side, just like a C# application, right? Whereas React, we're writing it in JavaScript, but then React is going to take our JavaScript and compile it into Android or compile it into iOS, right? So React has used this module system, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Okay. So whenever you deal with React Native, you use the word import, and whenever you use when you're working with server side Node, you use
No.
require.
So the rule's not that hard and fast because it might change. Do you know how you know? You read the documentation on the framework or whatever you're using, yeah?
Yeah.
There's no hard and fast, right? It's always read.
Okay.
The
Depending on what
documentation.
you want to actually use.
Depending on what you're familiar with, depending on what we use, depending on what you can use, right? Even now, right, in my app, I use the latest version of React Router. Right? It was completely rewritten. So what did I do? I spent a morning, I read the docs. I figured out the best way, the best practices, the idioms, what you use with it, how it's done. Then I sat down and thought about it, got a pen and paper, drew out my plan. Then I sat in front of the computer and coded. Make sense? You know, there's never a hard, but the main thing is that you've got the information to know to make the choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it's all about. So you're like, okay, there's these different module systems, right? Read the docs. What do they suggest? What's best practice? What's available? What do you use?
Okay, I always thought that it was a JavaScript determined thing. So whenever, you know how in C# you have rules of using certain keywords for certain things, I thought that JavaScript had import and require as certain keywords.
So-
but now I understand that it's actually based on the module type that you are trying to engage with.
So you can look here, hopefully they've got examples, but look, you can see that there's the asynchronous modular definition, yep. Then there's the common JS, like they said, right? And they show you all the different ways that it can be done. Look, let me just go back one. ES modules. Oh look, there's a cartoon deep dive, this could be funny. So, look, it's its arm reaching down, but it's not allowed to. That's maybe not the best example. Node, all right. So you can see here, there's the whole documentation of ECMAScript modules there, but they had another one. Dev cheat sheets, this might be a good one. All right, so there was actually, look, we've been through different ways of doing it, right? So you've got import and export. You could also use the syntax. Right, this approach uses, so we've got here, and this is what we're mostly starting to use now, except server-side require can be easy to use sometimes, yeah? But as of ES6, JavaScript supports native modules called ES modules or ECMAScript modules. This is the modern way of doing it. So this approach uses export and import instead of the old common JS syntax of modules.export and require. See that? So this is actually, it's actually getting easier for us. And look, part of it doing the require might have been part of my old habit as well. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're actually now getting into just using the new one, right? But if you have a look, you can see the browsers which don't support, you can specify a fallback script. So see how it says script type equals module source, yeah? Right, and you can see the different ones, but this is what we're at now, right? And you can see import and exports. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. Okay, so has everyone got this up and running? Yep. You're up, Andrew? Jake?
What are you gonna do the other day?
Yeah.
I had this visual, so I left it on.
You have what?
I had the visual, so I just left it on. See if I can do it here. Let's see if I can work on my computer. This way I've got to...
All good? Yeah. Up and running? Up and running? Doing good. Military operation today. Lot to get through. Alright, so I'm going to go to the docs to React navigation. And look, if you want to get there, I'm sure you've all learnt a little bit of Google food by now. React, native, navigation, it's the very top one. Yep. React, navigation. And guess what I'm going to go to? When you go there, I'm going to say read docs. Yeah, how's that? Getting started. So I want to show you in my project that I gave you, you know how I gave you the template? I already had 4 things installed. See these two packages, React Navigation Native and React Navigation Native Stack? And also see these two, React Native Safe Area Context and React Native Screens? So I had already downloaded them and installed them because you know how slow the network is here with the whole Essential 8 thing. But if we go to the docs, let me show you how easy it is to follow and let me explain it to you as we go along, okay? So, the first thing you do is you install the React Navigation Native base library, base package, okay? Because React Navigation offers different types of navigation. It offers pad navigation, draw navigation, but the simplest one is the stack navigator, and that's what I'm going to be able to show you today, right? But they all require, so you install the core or the base package, React Native Navigation, right? And then afterwards I'll show you we install which navigator we want to use, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do, and you can see it says it very clearly here. npm install React Navigation Native, so I just ran that, yeah? And then that, of course, then added this to my package.json along with, you know, installing it. See that? Yep. Like downloading the files for it, okay? So with that being done, the next thing that you need to do is, if you recall at the beginning I said when you create a React Native app, you can either use Expo and have a Expo managed app, or you can manually build it, right? Doing it with Expo is like an automatic car, right? Doing it without Expo is like a manual car. A lot more work. So usually people start off with Expo and get a fair bit of the app done, but if they get to the point where they realize they have to do some really tricky custom logic that Expo can't handle, you can actually eject your app out of the Expo workflow and just go to code. You know what I mean? Right? But for us, managed is easy. So, if you're using Expo, which we are, you have to run this Expo install React Native Screens and React Native Safe Area Context. Now I need to check up, but the main reason that we need these in here is React Native Screens adds the functionality for gestures, you know, like pinch and swipe and stuff like that to handle the navigation. The React Native Safe Area Context, what that does is, you know how mobile phones can have cameras in funny places or, yeah? So that library knows all the different models of phones and to make sure that you don't have a label being displayed underneath the camera. You know what I mean? It creates the context of the safe area. Alright, so they're just required libraries. Okay, so to start off with, you really only have to run 2 commands. Yeah? And I can spill my coffee all over the place. Fernando, what'd you do that for? Oh, lucky I got a paper towel. Alright.
Good coffee?
I didn't spill much. Luckily I had my, you know, safety cup. You know. Okay. So really you've only had to run 2 commands, and I think I've still got them in this project. So see, I've got a file here. See, that's just those 2 commands. See that? The first thing you run is that, yeah? And then the second command you run is that, yeah? Now that is clearly stated in the website. Alright, installation. Run this, and then run that. Yep? So I've done that, and you can see now, if I go to my package.json, that is this installed, yeah? Plus these 2 have been installed. Any questions?
All great.
All good?
Must be a big file.
Now, moving down, alright, let's forget about this at the moment. Moving down, the next thing now is we're going to install the native stack, right? React Navigation Native Stack. Now this is the simplest and easiest navigation to use, okay? And this is the one I will be teaching you, okay? So, to start off with, I've just run that command, And you can see, like I showed you, that's just installing that, yeah? So that's it there, and they're all installed, okay? Now let's go to app.js. Now everyone's got the app up and running, and everyone double check the package.json. You should all have the one up and running, and you should all have React navigation in it, yeah? Do you know how I gave you that zip file with the project template? Yeah, you're still working on that one, yeah?
Yeah, the one that we have doesn't have the installing React navigation. Is there a different version of that?
No, I didn't give you that notepad file, but you can look at the website. I just did that now. But the one I gave you, if you look at package.json, it's got those packages.
Yeah.
That's what matters, yeah? Okay, so now let's start off with something simple, okay? The first thing you need to do, and they actually show you, is we need to make it so we configure and set up the navigation and register components as screens. So what I'm going to do is let's just do a couple of components. Let's go function. Let's call it screen A, right?
Sorry, Peter, do you mind restarting Vision, please? Thank you.
Is that coming up?
Yeah.
Alright, so let's just go screen A. And here, I'm just going to call it screen A, yep. Now the next thing I'm going to do is another one, and I'm going to call this screen B. Alright? And I'll do a screen C. Okay, so can you see how I've just done 3 JSX components? Yep.
Every function is a JSX component within a JSON, sorry, a JS app, right?
So it's a JSX component if it meets, if it's used as one, and what are the rules for a function to be a JSX component?
It has no.
There's 2 rules. It has to return JSX and needs to be Pascal casing. Yes. Needs to be Pascal casing.
Oh yeah, I.
Pascal casing. Alright, I've got eyes in the back of my head. Okay? Alright. So that's what makes it a component, right? We're using it as a UI component. There is actually, when you get further down, and I won't get into it now, right? But when you actually get more involved with React, right? There is UI components, but then there is also some components in React that just provide functionality. Right? So there's 2 types of components. There's ones that actually just return JSX and other ones that actually do some higher level functionality. But I'm not even going to go near that with you. Otherwise, here's my explode.
And you need to import all of these components, such as the same way
We don't need to import anything at the moment because it's all in the one file. Importing and exporting
No, I mean like
creates a scope, right?
view,
For which you
text,
can import and export
button.
between files.
I mean like view, text, button, style, and yada yada. Like all this
Well,
stuff.
yeah, view and text we need to import, right? So imports happen on the level of the file, right? It's a way to create a scope and import and export things on the file level.
I see. So that's like copy components to like make it. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to the React Native, right? And I'm actually going to go, I'm getting started. And like I said, it shows you to do the installation. Now the first part here Alright, you just have to bear with me. This is where we actually start the configuration of the React, okay? So, what we need to do is we need to import what's called a navigation container. In fact, this is a component, but it's a functional one. See how it's a component, but you know what I mean? But in any case, what we need to do is we come in and we go import, right? And you can go navigation container and see how he imports it from React navigation, yeah? And then what I'm going to do is my app is no longer going to display a view. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an opening and a closing navigation container. See that? How it opens and closes the navigation container? Yeah? Now what a navigation container does is, in our app, we're only going to have, like with what we're doing, we're only going to have simple navigation. And what I mean by that is, we're just going to have the one navigation instance. So we have our index, like I said, that's going to show all of the people, you know, like Bob, Sue, and Sam, whatever. And from here, we'll also have our add new person, yeah? So we'll be able to navigate from index. This will take us up to the create, yeah? This, a little button for edit on each one of these, make sense? So click one of those and that will take us to the edit screen, yeah? And then we'll also have the delete button, like I said, yeah? You click one of those, it'll take you to the button, you know, you're sure you want to delete, you know, to the delete screen. So we're doing a very simple navigation from index to create to delete for the person, right? But imagine if you had an app, like, so this whole thing is going to be for person, the person entity, right? We're going to have an index, a list of all of the people, we're going to have a create, we're going to have a delete, confirm delete, and we're going to have an edit. So that's people navigation, yeah? You might actually have an app where the navigation gets way more complex and you actually want multiple navigation containers. Each one has its own navigator with its own list of screens. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? So I'm going to make it really simple, but I'm just letting you know this navigation container creates scope for a navigation object that knows just the route to the screens that are registered within it. But you could create another navigation section. Think of it as different sections of the app. Different sections of the app might have their own navigation, right? So within that case, you probably create different navigation containers that have their own navigators with their own screens in them, right? So that's why we need this navigation container. Now the next thing we need is a navigation stack, because that's the simplest one we're going to use. So if I come into, I'm going to explain it, alright? If I come into hello, you see we installed the stack navigator, and then you can actually see there we need to import a function that's called create stack navigator. And notice how we import that from the native stack one. Yep. So again, I'm still just moving, I'm on hello, React navigation, right? So you can see here what I can do is I can come in here and import that. See I've imported create stack navigator. And then what you do is you go const stack equals create stack navigator, and I invoke the function, right? Now the reason that I've declared this variable, it may look a bit strange, but the reason I've declared this variable with a capital S is because it's actually a component, right? And you want components to have Haskell casing, right? Then what you do, you've created a new instance of a stack navigator, and that's what this function returns. See how it returns a new instance of a stack navigator, okay? Now, I'll explain what a stack navigator is more in a second, but before we do that, let's just have a look at a quick example. And you can see here, you create an instance of the stack navigator, and then you start what we call registering components as screens. Okay? So, now that I've got this, I can actually go, create the instance, of the stack navigator. See that? Yeah. Then now I can register some screens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go stack.screen, and when you register a screen, there's two properties. The first one is the name. Now think of key value pairs. The name is the name that you want the key for the view, and the value is the UI component, the JSX component, okay? Now the name or the key, or when you register a component as a screen, it's the name that you use to navigate to it.
Oh, like ID, let's say.
Sorry?
Like ID. Like
Like
to
ID.
identify ID.
Yeah, it's like an ID. Yeah, that's correct. It's the identifier for it. So I actually just call, to make it easy on myself, I call the name of the screen the same as the name of the component, right? So what I would do is I would say the name equals screen A, yeah, and the component equals screen A. And now what I've actually done is I've registered, see I've registered a screen, yeah? That's the fundamentals. Now if I have a look, check it out, see that? And see how it's also got that title at the top? The navigator does that, yeah? And I'll show you why. Because that title, when we navigate from one screen to another, it'll actually get a back button. But I'll show you in a minute, yeah? So, how's that? Does that work for everyone? Can everyone see everything there? All good?
Yeah. I think that encourages the with the dev tools, how do you get the rule bar there?
What are you on for? Oh, so this is the mobile phone emulator. And then you can select, Pixel 5 should be pretty good. Any questions? So this part of it, once you just read the docs and you learn how to, configure it in the app.js, right? It's actually then just a matter of just adding more screens, registering more screens, creating the components and registering them. Navigating, we'll get to that in a minute, yeah? All good? Now, in a minute, I'll also explain, I'll give you all a second, but I'll also explain why it's called a stack navigator. It's got nothing to do with how it looks visually. The word stack has actually got to do with how it works mechanically. Right? So the word stack has got to do with the mechanics and the behavior and the functionality, not with the way that it looks. It's not like it's a menu with one link stacked on top of the other. No. It's the functionality of it, which I'll get to in a second. Yeah? Working? Working?
Yeah, just need to put this and should be...
Good. You'll be able to create your own fantasy football app.
I was wondering how do they do the ones playing in real time?
The what, sorry?
He's not showing up. Maybe they have like
Yeah, so there's different ways of doing that, right? So typically, with HTTP, right, the client initiates. So the client makes a request, the server sends a response. So if you want the client to be updated, the client has to make a request and get a response. So in the past, what they did is they did something that they call long polling, P-O-L-L-I-N-G, where it'd just be a loop, right? And it'd wait 3 seconds, send a request, get a response. Wait 3 seconds. So the client always initiated it in a loop. Make sense? Long polling. But then they've actually brought out something that's called WebSockets. And WebSockets is actually a new protocol which allows for two-way communication between the server and the client, where the server actually pushes notifications to all registered clients. Very clever. Very clever. Beyond the scope of Cert 4. I introduced it a little bit in diploma, and some students do it because Microsoft have brought in something called Signal R, which is their implementation of WebSockets. It's not that hard to use, you know, you just,
Yeah, but I was like, because they have like the position of the ball. And
Yeah.
they're saying, oh, it's attacking, it's defending, blah, blah, blah.
yeah, it'd be
Probably
WebSockets.
someone like-
It'll be WebSockets.
Yeah.
Working?
Yeah, working
Yeah.
just trying to.
Working, man. No spaces between, and look, come on, look at yours. No spaces between the name value pairs, and look what I've named one, no spaces in there, that's right.
I think my
And no spaces between the equals when you do name value pairs. Like, see, you've got name equals screen A. Same
I
case,
believe
you
it.
never have
Stop.
spaces in between
Is
there.
it there already? Go to.
I didn't do it earlier.
No, you don't need to do it.
The other way.
It's there.
I'm not being mean, I'm just trying to instill good habits early on in your programming career, yeah? 'Cause if you
React
get them-
Native here. Navigate.
You know, the beginning's the best place
It's
to
a lot.
get the good habits happening, isn't it?
So do
Right? It's harder to learn.
Is there already?
Yeah. Then if I try to thing,
Okay.
I get an error saying, "Oh, but this is not important."
Sorry? Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
I hate it. Anything that makes it right way, like,
Are you
I can't
running?
stand
You're
it.
not
Send me
running.
three
I
sharp.
was running before.
It's like, why would you make it red's error? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see it. It sticks out like really aggressively.
It does. It does. It's wrong. You know? Like, I find that some, like, I like the colours that are set there, you know? Because I know them.
Name equals.
That's how I help students as well. Sometimes when I'm looking at it and I'm scanning, I'm not actually reading, I just look for the colours, wrong colours. Functions in yellow, components are turquoise or seafoam or whatever. Variables are light blue, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keywords are dark
Go to
blue,
console.
returns purple, you know?
My
Module
modules
file.
87.
Alright,
Pip.
so what's happened here is
Console.
because there's only one screen
I
registered,
think because you were installed.
right?
Maybe.
That's the first one that it shows. Does that make sense? Yeah?
What do you mean?
Well, if you look at the Stack Navigator, how many screens have I registered? One, right? So because there's only one there, as soon as the app starts up, Expo calls this app component for us, yeah? The app component runs this, and then it creates an instance of the first component, yeah? So now if I register another screen, and this time I'm going to register screen B, yeah? And I change the component to be screen B, right? Notice how it's still screen A?
Yeah.
Now, watch this. If I get this, and I put it on top, what's just happened?
Yeah, so it's loading the first one.
So, it always loads the one at the top. Does that make sense? The first one it encounters, it considers that to be the initial route. But, if you want, check this out. You can go into the navigator and go, initial route name equals screen A, and look. So you can also, so implicitly, it'll take what? The first one that's been registered. But you can explicitly set it by using what prop? Initial route name, which is a prop of the stack.navigator component. Make sense? Yep. Now what I do, just so you know, I typically do this both. I set it implicitly and explicitly. Why? Because it's self-documenting, it's easy to look at, it's easy to read. You know there's no misunderstanding. Right? I try to be considerate. Yeah? Of other people that are going to come in and work on my code. Or I have to work with my code. Yeah? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting something out.
Well, you got 6 errors.
Yeah, just one.
What are the errors?
Let's see.
React JSX is invalid. React runtime expected a string for built-in components. So can I have a look here? Uncaught error. Navigator can only contain string, group, or React fragment.
Is it because I have multiple app files in?
Yes, you can't keep doing that, mate. You gotta delete old ones or put them back and back them up somewhere, right?
Yep.
Because you've got multiple functions that are exported that are called app, all in the same directory, and it doesn't know which one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this app A, yeah?
Oh, you can delete.
And I'm going to call this app B. Well, it's only looking for one called app, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, in your instance, it had picked up the top one.
I'm more happy for that files to be deleted. It's just the same files that you had last.
Can I delete them?
Yes.
And why have you got two node modules? And why? You're not in the right directory even, man.
I put it in my app, did I?
No, you're not even in the... No, you've opened up the wrong...
Directory.
Okay.
So I was in.
I never want to see you make that mistake again. You
But I
always
purposely
open...
went-
You always open... Right? There's your app there.
Yep. Well, if you check my CD, it's back in my app.
Yeah, but you've already... No, you've gone one up